How many times do the big plans that we have for our lives get interrupted by something that life throws at us? Well, today we're joined by Ben Baggett, and he walks us through how he went through just a series of unfortunate events, but turned that into a thriving business that gives him passion and purpose. You're listening to Take a Step, the podcast that helps driven young professionals turn their inspiration into application. My name's Josh Johnston. Let's take a step. Before we jump in, I got to give a quick shout out to Woodcraft South, the official Take a Step sponsor. In a world filled with cheap and fast, nothing compares to the authenticity of handcrafted custom woodwork. Whether it's a personalized logo engraved gift for one of your top clients, a special piece for a significant other, or a custom decor piece to elevate your workspace, Woodcraft South delivers craftsmanship that leaves a lasting impression. Turner Lee, the owner of Woodcraft South, who I have so much respect for, fully embodies the take a step mentality. He spent 7 years at a desk, wishing he could be more creative and purpose-driven with his work. With no perfect plan in place, he took a step to begin doing what he loved, which meant working nights and using what he had, and eventually turned a part-time passion into a full-time business that grows every year by crafting some of the most unique custom pieces you'll find. For example, if you watch any of the Take a Step video podcasts, you'll see this Take a Step custom decor piece behind me made by Turner, which just makes the space look so much more clean and professional. If you're wanting to leave your own lasting impression, then reach out to Turner at Woodcraft South and let him know you heard about him from Take a Step. It's so easy to get behind people who just bet on themselves. So the links to connect with him on social will be in the podcast description. And with that said, let's get right into this episode. Ben, welcome to the Take a Step podcast. Happy to have you on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, 100%. Looking forward to our conversation. I know you have a pretty cool story, and both past and what you're currently doing. So looking forward to diving in. But before we do, I want to just kind of turn it over to you and let you kind of introduce yourself however you see fit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess a couple podcasts I've been on have been baseball ones, so I'll try to make this one less baseball and more balanced. My name's Ben Baggett. I am 28 now. I run a business related to baseball training. We do remote training. So basically take guys from wherever they are and we're able to train them holistically, strength stuff, skill specific stuff. It's almost like a concierge kind of consultation type service, honestly. Mm-hmm. And we're able to do it with guys anywhere and everywhere. So we've, built a brand via social media and different things, have a few coaches who have done the same thing, doing their own basically branding and putting out information. And so we basically can reach guys anywhere. We've built out a scheduling app and software system to communicate with guys, send them workouts, build their whole schedule, communicate, track anything and everything we want. I got into this back in post-college, about 2020, right after COVID had kicked off. I went to Stanford, graduated from Stanford, played 4 years of baseball there from 2015 to 2019, and then went to business school and ended up getting connected with a guy, and he kind of had the idea to do it. There was a few people sort of doing it. It was rather new, back before the big social media boom. I feel like kind of COVID and social media worked together in this weird way where I felt like they really kind of boosted everything. And so, back before 2019, there wasn't really a concept of doing a lot of stuff remotely to my knowledge. And there was one company that did it pretty well. And my buddy had seen that, and I was, really passionate about baseball. I had, on the personal side, had dealt with a lot of injuries, kind of some weird freak stuff and a lot of bad luck, and was not able to ever really play in college. So spent 4 years on pretty much the injured list, not being able to do anything, not really even being able to do anything related to baseball. So it's not even like I was kind of hurt and playing. It's like I just couldn't even really throw most of the time. And I got really passionate about, solving those issues. I think really passionate about figuring out what's wrong, figuring out how to solve it, and how to gather as much information as possible to find a solution. And it started as like, hey, I'm not, 6'4" and naturally gifted with like a 95-mile-an-hour fastball at 16 years old, but I want to play in the big leagues. So how do I basically reverse engineer a way to get there myself? And then that process kicked off in high school. And then I gradually kept, with the injuries, that adds more to your plate. Now it's not only reverse engineer how to actually get better at baseball, it's reverse engineer how to get healthy, how to solve this injury, how to solve that injury. And so that really carried me through college. It carried me after college, where I still wanted to continue to play and just couldn't really get healthy. And obviously, you're out of college, you have to survive. And so started doing that. And I was really passionate about problem solving. And so then what better way to, problem solve than to do it with other guys and what they're doing, especially when you've already kind of been through a lot of stuff. You've seen a lot of stuff. I think baseball was in a place where there was very few people going against the grain, and there was a lot of we just do what we always do. And so, if you do what you always do, you're just going to get what you've always gotten. And so I think, that works for the 0.1% who is just naturally skilled enough. But I think for the other 99%, it doesn't. And also, I don't really think you're meeting people where they're at to get them to what they want to get. You're just rolling the dice, and then you have some kid who's maybe naturally talented enough to play at a Division III school. But what if he had the right information and direction and process to actually get to a Division I school or play it as high school, or a minor league guy who's kind of a fringe minor league guy who wants to be a big leaguer, or whatever that might be, is taking that.
Yeah. Small steps.
Taking that step up, I think, thinking about that and then the impact that you could have with guys. And I think just the relationship aspect of baseball and how much I enjoyed that. I think being able to provide direction for guys was something super, super appealing to me. So I got into coaching, during business school, started running this business. We were really working at this. A buddy of mine and I and some other guys were working at a prep school up in Charlotte. It's kind of like an IMG. Combine Academy was the name of it. Really good basketball school, like a basketball prep school.
Yeah.
And my buddy had started coaching this program and had kind of taken it from this original kind of Bad News Bears, like just a random collection of all the way from like 15-year-old high school freshmen to post-grad, 19-year-old kids that hadn't committed to a college yet. And he had a lot of resources. And so I went up and joined him, and we basically kind of slept and coached and learned about coaching and just put in a ton of time. And that was over the next 2.5 years. We just coached. I actually ended up getting healthy, training with our pro guys, just messing around, playing catch with high schoolers, playing catch with pro guys. Started to, I wanted to still play. I was getting older, 25, 26, was getting married. So it's like, I can't keep chasing the dream forever, just, living on couches. So ended up getting healthy, got signed by the Toronto Blue Jays off Twitter, and played in 2022, 2023, got released.
When you say signed off Twitter, what do you mean? Explain.
Yeah,
I'm sure so many people are like, what are you talking about?
I guess, yeah. So the baseballism's coming out. So I was training with our guys. I was playing catch with them, throwing with them, whatever they needed. Was still caring about my own, fitness and trying to throw, and ended up, feeling really good. The ball was coming out well. And we had, I don't know, probably 18, 20 professional guys, some college guys, along with all of our high school guys. And so I'm training with them. I decided to get up on the mound one day and just, see how hard it is, and was throwing really hard. mid 90s plus, and we got video of it. We got TrackMan data, which is like a radar system that basically tells you all this advanced analytic type numbers on pitches. And my buddy just put it out just, because almost like as a show off. And I'm not thinking anything of it. I was not preparing for anything. I was not preparing to play specifically. It was just the pro guys were it was maybe late December. So we're starting to inch them towards spring training. And so I just decided to get up there and sling it one day, and came out really well. And it got put on. We took the video, we took the, just a screenshot of some of the analytics and put it on Twitter. And then we went home and, we're going through all of our guys for the day, kind of doing our work. I'm doing my remote business kind of work, probably going through some guys. And I got a phone call from Toronto, Canada. And I was, a little like, I don't know anybody in Toronto. I don't know what this is. And I actually had a buddy who was in Toronto at that time, and I knew he had just gone up there. So I thought maybe he was in trouble and was calling me from something, from a payphone or anything. And I answered it super nonchalantly, actually, and was I'm glad I didn't say something that I would have regretted to some. And it turned out to be the assistant general manager for the Toronto Blue Jays. And he basically soft offered me a roster spot, a contract. And it took another couple weeks, but I ended up getting a contract signed with the Blue Jays, and got sent to minor league baseball. Pitched in 2022 while also, continuing to run this remote business and build that, and just did both at the same time, really. Was pursuing my own career, building this business, coaching a ton of guys, bringing on a couple coaches, and it's just grown ever since. And then I actually had a kind of a weird situation in 2023. I had a blood clot and basically like swelled out and had a pretty major surgery, and just haven't really been able to come back from that. So playing career, sort of ended, if it ever even really, I don't know if it's ever truly ended or if it ever even truly started, but basically continuing to do the same thing, running a remote baseball business. And that's kind of the pursuit right now.
Yeah. So from 2023 and having that surgery until right now, it's been all in, focused on growing this thing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I didn't get technically released until 2024. So, it was a lot of rehab and stuff like that. But after not being able to come back, there's only so much you can do.
What was it like navigating growing the business and playing professionally at the same time?
It was tough, but it wasn't as tough as I imagined it to be initially. I think maybe being at Stanford and actually having to take school pretty seriously, there's no real breaks there in terms of majors or any favors that are going to get done. So I think time management was already a skill that was ingrained. And so then it was like, well, instead of showing up to the field at, cause you play it late at night. And so if I'm coming out of the bullpen, I'm not even actually going to work until like 9:45, 10 o'clock anyways, to get ready to pitch. If you're playing a 7 o'clock game, the guys are pitching, the whole game's going on. You're not even pitching till 9:30 anyways. So you're kind of getting juiced up at 9:30 to go to work. And then, I'm not going to sleep until 2, 3, 4 a.m. anyways. So you're sleeping and you're getting up at 11 or noon, just, trying to get enough sleep. And then you're showing up to the field. But instead of showing up to the field and, relaxing and getting a massage and laying around, it's like, oh, I got to get on my computer and either, take care of whoever I'm coaching, take care of communication stuff with guys, take care of accounting, financial stuff, anything really. It wasn't a point, I don't think, of major growth, but of major active growth. But I think, growth doesn't have to be you only pursuing, going out and getting more clients or whatever. Like it could be in knowledge. It could be, in terms of putting, taking that knowledge and putting stuff out. It could be a lot of stuff. And so I think just putting a premium on, hey, what can I do right now to actually make the most impact? And that might be coach my guys really well, to where if I coach them so well that they get 2 more teammates to sign up each, that's, we just tripled my athlete count. And so I think it was hard for sure when you're seeing, your teammates who were a lot younger than me, given where I was at, just, sit around and shoot the bull and get on Instagram and get on Twitter and watch movies. But I mean, so is life.
We'll get back to the episode in just a minute, but real quick, you guys may have heard me talk about my work with the 1% Club. If you're a driven professional, entrepreneur, or business leader who just feels stuck, like you're chasing success but still coming up short on fulfillment, the time to act is now. The 1% Club specializes in helping entrepreneurs and business leaders like you step into the life and business you've always dreamed of. We don't just focus on growing profits. We're here to help you grow you, aligning your passion, purpose, and potential. On the Take a Step podcast, we connect with individuals like you, ambitious, ready to act, but just seeking clarity on how to turn that inspiration into application. This is how you act. With the 1% Club, you'll gain first clarity on your vision by finding out what success really looks like for you. Second, action-oriented strategies by eliminating wasted time dreaming and starting the process of setting goals and taking action. And then third, accountability. You'll have a team of 1% Club coaches to help ensure follow through. Your future's waiting, and the 1% aren't just dreaming about it, they're building it. Look into the 1% Club and take the step toward the life you know you're built for. In the description, there's a link to book a call so that we can dive into what kind of goals and challenges you're facing to see if you'd be a good fit. So you were talking about how when you were going through the injury, trying to, figure out how you're going to come back, you would have never started what you started having not gone through that, which I think is so unique how, people want this picture perfect journey and they try to run from the challenges. They try to run through the hardships. But, for you would have never had what you're building right now if you hadn't once gone through those hardships. Do you ever sit back and think about that, or did you think about that in the current moment?
I didn't think about it at all in the current moment. I thought about it as like, what problem do I have and where do I want to be? And then how do I need to solve that problem, to basically get back on. I thought about it always like to get back on track, but it was really just like always about reverse engineering the process, and wherever that, the information or the situation that you're in at this current moment might be completely different tomorrow, but just focusing on solving it now. I think after, when I'd started and maybe had like 40 guys myself coaching, it was, hey, like I wouldn't know some of this stuff if it wasn't for that. And I think some of it, especially in the harder situations, with guys going through injuries, guys navigating, bad situations at their college. I think a lot of guys who just, you see them on TV, they roll in on, whether it's College World Series or even like the big leagues sometimes, I think. And it's not to discount anybody getting there, but I think a lot of those guys, all the dominoes just were right in place. Like, I'm not saying there was no struggles or anything, but it was a lot of dominoes just perfectly kind of stacked, everything timed up well. But I don't think that's how majority of careers really work. And so if majority of these guys are going to go through stuff, it's going to be hard. Having already gone through a lot of hard stuff, and especially at such like a wide range of injuries to people, to things like that, I think it better equips you to actually make a difference. And that's where you're going to make more of a difference, honestly. Some kid's not pitching at the school that he dreamed of going his whole life, and the coach doesn't even talk to him. It's like, well, it's a really tough situation to be in. Like, I think you discount, we're so focused on ourselves and we're so selfish in nature that we don't, we're worried about our own problems and what we do well, that, you forget when you were the 19-year-old kid at the school that you dreamed of going to since you were 15, and like, a coach doesn't even talk to you because you're hurt, and you don't even pitch for 4 years because you're basically like useless. And so it's not it's not a sob story of like, oh, like woe is me, but it allowed me to, I mean, I gritted through it and then figured out, how would I go about this differently, or, how would I help somebody in that situation? But you don't really ever think about it, I don't think, until somebody brings it up.
Yeah.
It's what you did. And now when you see those kids in front of you and their problems, you're way more equipped to handle it. And I think you don't really think about it until you get asked the question like that. So I would say no, I never really thought about it, and I don't think about it honestly until people bring it up. And
Yeah.
usually like, when you're getting into deeper level stuff, but it
And
will
it's like, having gone through that, like the cool part about that is, while it probably sucked in the current moment, now like you're able to share that perspective. I
right.
guarantee with countless guys that you work with on a day to day is like, hey, I didn't choose this path, but because I went through that, I'm now able to shed light and change lives and change how people think about their current situation because I've gone through that.
Right. Yeah, 100%. And I think it's just super, you know, it's hard to connect with someone who hasn't gone, who hasn't gone through something really tough like that. And
Yeah.
I don't, it's not like they don't have credibility in terms of what they've done or anything that they've done is easier, but it doesn't, you really know what somebody's gone through until you kind of hit it yourself, or the ethos that someone else has with you is way higher because you know that they've kind of worked through that.
Yeah. That makes sense. So like moving on from that injury, and as you went into really kind of sinking your teeth into growing the business, what, when you first started, did you feel like you had enough knowledge, or like you kind of had it all figured out and it was going to be this track record, or like, all right, I know how to coach people, I'm going to be able to bring on clients, or has it been a big learning curve since you started to where you're at now?
No, I actually think when we started, I thought I knew more then than I think I do now. And I think it was, the young gun cowboy thing, but realistically, it's like you're 23 years old. Like you don't really know that much. You definitely don't know anything about business outside of just, do a really, really good job and treat people really well. But I think those are just kind of common sense wise. But no, I actually feel like now I almost feel less equipped or less confident than I did when I was just shooting from the hip at 23, but I think it's like, as you get older, you get a little bit more respectful about other people's intelligence or other ways of thinking and things like that. And I think I think I've got to be careful with the pursuit of trying to be the best, trying to be the best thinker and trying to provide the best solutions and the best, really, for like athletes, and programming and information. Cause it's what it is. It's like, what we do is basically we have information and we put together information based on circumstances. And so I always want to have more and more information so I can make better, more accurate decisions, to give me a better chance of being successful. And so the older you get, the more information you're exposed to. And so I think there's actually a little bit more sometimes of like, I don't want to be wrong here because this also kind of makes sense. So sometimes there's a little bit more paralysis by analysis now. But, I would say that it was it's hard to put ideas out there. It's actually easier, I think, to communicate ideas in the context of a relationship that you personally have with someone, because you have all the, if I'm coaching somebody one-on-one, I have a lot more knowledge about their situation, their circumstances, the little nuances of what's going on, versus putting things out in the public sphere, like social media,
Yep.
and that type of stuff. I don't really like as much because, the nuance of training, physical things, anything. Like there's nuance with everything. Like everything that you could say out loud, someone could actually take it,
Yep.
prove you wrong, and then, trash you. And so I wouldn't say I like really care about what other people have to say at all, but I think I don't want to be wrong. I just want to do a really good job. I just want to provide, the best information or the best training or the best product or whatever. I just want to be the best. So sometimes I think for me, there's a lack of confidence about making a claim or saying something out loud, especially on social media, because, well, if you looked at it from this lens, you missed this part. And so I don't want to do that. Because what if I miss that and this kid takes it and then goes and does the wrong thing and then ends up, worse. And so I think that's where really my struggle of confidence can come from sometimes, just because, a desire to really do a good job to where you understand that where there's nuance, there can be, things taken out of context. And then it's not really about somebody thinking I'm an idiot. I don't really care. I just don't want somebody to take the wrong information from it or infer something different or try to twist my words. And then they end up doing something, wrong, basically.
Yeah. And I think that's very cool because like most people that I talk to, at least, they struggle with getting started. Like that's usually the most challenging step for a lot of people because they experience the paralysis by analysis from the very beginning on, what happens if this doesn't work? What happens if I make the wrong decision here? But it's so cool in your story. Like I think of like ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Like from the very beginning, like what you don't know is actually a huge strength because it allows you to make decisions not knowing what you don't know, which generates action. It generates momentum. And then the more momentum you've gained, the more you've learned over time. It's like with that knowledge creates a little bit more fear because you're like, oh, wait, I actually know the implications of my actions if things don't go the way I planned now, not so much when I first started. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Have you seen that with other people, and whether if it's the business space or trying to build or promote their own brand on social media, that first step is usually pretty challenging?
Yeah, I think a lot of guys kind of struggle to figure out I think sometimes guys can struggle to jump in on stuff like that, doing either putting stuff out or actually going out and doing something. But I don't even know how much of it sometimes comes from I think the lack of confidence to go out and do it is ultimately like more of a reflection of a lack of confidence in yourself to know what your niche is or what you're trying to do. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I think I was so passionate and strongly knew my niche was I can reverse engineer a way to get you where you want to be physically related to baseball. And so I was so confident, and that's what I'm really good at. And that's how my brain works, that I didn't have a problem going in and just cowboy Wild West, I made good decisions and made some bad decisions. But I think I was able to do that because of how confident and settled into my niche I was from the start. Like, I think now I have, if your niche is like really, really narrow, you can't really miss but as you start to grow and get bigger, your niche can get maybe a little bit bigger. And then the fuzziness on the outside, I think that fuzziness is where it's like, well, I don't know as much about that, so I don't feel as confident putting that out there or putting this out there because it strays a little bit from, my exact specific niche. And so I think that's where maybe the lack of confidence to actually go out there and get something done in that regard is, whether that's like posting or whatever. But I think the further you stray from what you do really well, or if you don't even know what you do really well, what you're trying to do well, then you're sure as hell not going to go out and do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's harder.
Go ahead.
I guess it's just going to be harder.
Yeah, I had a couple episodes ago. Tony Clark, he's a very successful entrepreneur and just built from the ground up. And he said something about confidence that a quote. I think he said it was from Brendan Burchard, but he said confidence breeds competence.
Yeah.
So like the more confident you are in doing something, and confidence. Another thing I've heard on confidence, confidence is just displayed ability. Like
Right.
the more you display to yourself that you're able to go out and do something and you create repetition behind that, that breeds confidence. And then the more confident you are in something, that breeds the competence, the ability to go out and make it happen.
Right.
So and I think the one consistent in all of that is time.
Right.
It's time and action. Action plus time equals results. And I hear that throughout your story, 100%. So for you, I guess so from the beginning, once you started putting out the content and started building and started growing, gaining traction, was there fears associated with just what you were saying, or just the idea of like putting your brand out there in general? Because I like that was a big thing for me when I first got started building, was like everyone that followed me in any sort of social setting, they knew me for, Josh, the individual. And then once I started putting myself out there, I was like, hey, this is what I'm trying to build, and showing my passion behind it. My perception was like, all right, everyone's going to think like Josh is trying to be this influencer, and the judgment of others, the fear of what
Yeah.
others were going to think of me. Where were you at when you were trying to build in the initial stages?
I think I was definitely in a same spot. I think that personally, because I had made I was not perfect in terms of the decisions that I had made with my own career, and in terms of training. There wasn't a lot of information out in when I started getting into like the actual training sphere and learning about baseball development, it was 2012. And no one knew anything, like legitimately anything about it outside of what you've all like, just do what you've always done. And I think from that point to the end of college would be like my personal just deep dive myself. And so with there not being a lot of information, like there wasn't a lot of information for me to work with. So there was a lot of experiments. There was a lot of trial and error. There was a lot of error. Like if you're experimenting, you're experimenting with yourself. You don't really kind of know. You've got to fail to learn what actually, basically got to fail to figure out why that doesn't work. And so I think for me personally, the part that was hard was the injuries and stuff was like, well, what do I actually know? I just haven't even been able to play. So I think trying to put stuff out there with a background that was like, well, I don't actually, I haven't been successful in terms of myself, really. I mean, it depends on how you define success, but if you're looking at success of just like how many innings have you logged at wherever you're at, or how successful have you been, it's like zero. So I think that was really hard for me to do and get over, because how can people think that I'm actually right about something?
Yeah.
Because they're not looking at what the actual claim that I'm making. They're just like, well, you don't know anything. You haven't done anything. And it's like, well, look at the claim I'm making. And so then once it was like, hey, I've just got to be so clear at what I'm saying. It's got to make the most sense. Like it's got to be logical. It's got to be backed up. So once and I think once you start having success, the ball starts rolling. It's like, well, I'm starting to think about this a lot better. I'm starting to find, like you said, the competence and the confidence, how they kind of just feed each other. And so, but I think the personal side of it was, it's like you just being a degenerate your whole life, and then all of a sudden, the degenerate becomes a pastor, and then he knows all his friends are like, come on, you're not a pastor. Like, come on,
Yeah.
and it's like, you're not looking at like the claim of what I'm saying. You're
Yeah,
just
you're judging the source, not the individual piece of content.
exactly. And so I think then it was about, then it was about, well, can I take this content and these claims that I'm making and can I rebuild myself and be successful myself, which I did. And then, can I make more and more and more objective, well, not like, objective truth claims, but like, can I be the best in terms of putting out information or training guys to get better or coaching? So it was really hard at first. And I think that was the big obstacle.
So if you like being, I guess 5 years in, 23, you're 28 now.
Yeah. 28.
So if you were to go back and look at your 23-year-old self who's shooting from the hip, who's just like feels like he's got, everything figured out in the world of business, like if you were to go back, what are some pieces of advice you would tell that Ben Baggett?
I would probably say, you don't need to be so cynical about everyone and everything. Like, just because I think everyone that I ever disagreed with when I was younger was an idiot. They don't know anything. They're just an idiot because they're wrong about this one thing, or I disagree with them about this one thing. And I think that created like a bad mindset of how to view people, how to view information. And so I think because I had interacted with some people that didn't want to help and they didn't help, in some ways they gave me bad information and they didn't really want to help me anyways. It made me cynical to everyone who had bad information or not the best information. And so I think that created this almost mindset or approach to people or things I disagreed with, where it was like, and I'm kind of like a blunt person anyway, where it was like, oh, guy's an idiot, doesn't know anything. Guy's an idiot, doesn't know anything. It's people, these people are idiots. And I don't, they're not actually, they might be idiots. They very well could be, but they might not be. And, they might just be at a different stage, or they might see things a little different, and there's probably something you can pick from it. And so I think that was that influenced a lot of how I thought about everything for a long time. And I don't think that's like a good way to even approach life in general. And so that was something and I still struggle with that now. I have a buddy who's coaching professionally, and he was the same way. He probably influenced me because he was really bad.
Yeah.
But once he got into the sphere of professional coaching, he had a tough time, and he had to kind of rewire how he was thinking. And I noticed it a couple of years ago, and I'm like, hey, you don't, like, this guy's an idiot and you haven't said anything really bad about him. And then he kind of walked me through it, and it was really interesting. And then I started kind of reevaluating how I was even just talking to myself, or how I was conversating with other people in whatever the coaching realm. Of someone would say something about, oh, this guy said this, or this guy thinks that. And I would catch myself all the time, and I still do it. But I think not being so, 0 to 100 about, like, so polarizing about that guy's an idiot or that idea is stupid. Because, I was at 23 and there was way less information, but I was definitely doing really stupid stuff. So what would, if some older guy was looking at me, just, only I'm an idiot, then, he's not giving me credit for maybe what I objectively could have been right on, or where I am now. So I think it's like, just not throwing the baby out with the bathwater in terms of, people overall. Just be a little bit more gracious in terms of how you see them, how you talk, how you say things. I think just like the language that you reiterate over and over and over to yourself really makes a difference in terms of like how you're thinking. So not being so 0 or 100, so binary.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, because and perception is reality, right? So like
Right.
the way you view every situation. If I look at everyone with a sense of negativity, that will become the reality that I live as well. There's a great book that you've probably heard of it, The 4-8 Principle by Tommy Newberry. He talks a lot about the way that our thoughts shape our actions, and we have like direct control over a thought life. So if we think about individuals and their the claims that they're making with a certain perception that's always negative, that's going to shape every decision we now make is born out of negativity,
Right.
not positivity. Yeah, so I love that. That's the one thing, because I think that's something a lot of people look over. They would look at, hey, what action should I have taken, or what decisions should I have making different? But it's really just kind of how I perceived, not necessarily your competition, but how you perceived the industry as a whole,
Right.
and the false or perceived false claims that people were making. It's very cool. One other point I want to hit on before we wrap up is, in just looking through a lot of your through a lot of your content and a lot of the testimonials that of the people that you've worked with that have seen tremendous success. There's something that I kept coming across in that, and that's praising the communication that you have with your clients, and just the consistency that you approach, always being always being on top of communication, making sure that you're checking in with them on even whether they're going through a season of growth, if they're plateauing, if they're going through some negativity, the communication's always there. So how important has that communication been to you in building a brand for yourself in the coaching world?
I think it's definitely I would say at this point now, it's kind of the separator in terms of the business, of what we do. If you're a concierge kind of consultation service, realistically, um, the, there's enough information out on the internet about training, like there is. And I know, I guess weeding through it, being on the other side of the bell curve and maybe not being exposed to it, like, yeah, it can be hard to weed through information. But there's a lot of, like, if you just could at this point you could go on AI and get a throwing program and get a lifting program or get whatever. It's probably not going to be like awesome, but it's probably going to be fine.
Yeah.
And now, what where the value lies in most businesses is how can you figure out who you're talking to in terms of what they want and how they want to be communicated to, and how can you best help them understand the information that's going to get them from point A to point B and get them motivated enough to do it. And so, you can't do that unless you're communicating with them, and you can't figure out how people react to things and just like a general feel for people unless you're doing it a lot. And I think nowadays there's people who are doing what we're doing, businesses doing what we're doing, bigger businesses, and when we're getting a lot of their bounce back clients, like guys who've been with them, and they're like, hey, I haven't talked to, I signed up with this company and I never heard from my coach in like 3 months. And I'm checking in with guys once a week, at least. Like I'm, got a set time of checking in at least once a week, but I'm always there in terms of communication. And I think, that's, if you really say you care about people, then you've got to care about people. And we do that via communications. It's how relationships are built. And so, I want a guy to come to me. Like, I don't want to be a therapist by any means, and I'm not a therapist. It'd be a terrible one. But I think you can't you're not going to pretend to care about people long enough for someone to believe it. And so having just an authentic, I want this guy to be successful. I want to be successful on the baseball field. I want him to be successful as like a man in terms of how he learns to think about, situations. I feel like that's what everyone talks about with sports. Everyone's in their 30s and we're all like, oh yeah, like got to play sports because it teaches you to be an adult and be a man. It's like, wait, it really does. Like how you approach a problem, how you approach doing something when you don't want to do something, how you approach struggling with something, how you approach bouncing back from things. And so there's so many lessons that can be learned through sports. And so being able to meet guys where they're at and help them handle not only, hey, how am I approaching today's training, or what am I doing on Friday for throwing? It's like, you know, hey, I just, pitched in the super regional and blew the lead against Texas A&M on live TV. Like, that's a tough situation, but how you learn to bounce back from that, and how are you going to approach the next time you get the ball? And so that's going to be a lesson that it's going to make a huge impact on your life when you're 40 and something really major happens with your kids or your wife. And I'm not even 40 and nothing's major happened with my wife, and we don't have kids yet. So I don't know either, but I do know that if we're looking at the current situation and I can be there from a communication aspect of like, I mean, you got to be there, you got to be present in order to help them through those situations anyway. So if I'm not even communicating with my guys, do I really even, do I care that much, or do I just say that I care? And so I think really that is the focus on that's what I want the priority to be on. What we do well from the coaching aspect is like, yeah, we're going to make, we're going to have some really smart people who love looking at research journals about, spinal segmentation and tendon stiffness and stuff. We've got those guys, and we've got guys who are going to take that and put it into programs and systemized ways to actually approach situations. But what we're going to do really well, and what I would want to do better, is communicate with guys in terms of getting them, fired up to do what they're going to do, and also learning how to like deal with the ebbs and flows of training, of their career, of the whole balance of everything together. And so I think that is, it's basically customer service, but it's a long-winded way to say you want to communicate really well and do customer service really well.
Yeah, and what keeps coming to my mind as you're talking about it is empathy. When you hear about, like you're talking about, I could go on ChatGPT, type in, give me a 3-month, I'm having tightness on the inside of my elbow every time I throw. This is the level of pain it's at. Give me a 3-month throw-in program that's good. And I might be ruining your business right now, but
right.
but like you can do that, and even if a company could probably say have all these prompts, type them out, and then have AI generate a bunch of throwing programs. Which if that's what someone wants, if they just want a framework or a schedule and they don't want the personalized touch, then great. But at the end of the day, the companies and the people that can have a level of consistent communication paired with the empathetic nature of being able to hear someone and meet them where they're at, whether they're in whether if they just struck out the last guy to send their team to the College World Series, or they blew the lead in the Super Regional, being able to meet them where they're at is something that someone who just generates some sort of program, or if they just go type it in, they're not going to get that same level of connection, which that's where the relationship nature comes into play. And the people that can tap into that are the people that will have longevity with clients, I think.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I think you also, I mean, you're not dealing with like a product, you're not selling I'm not selling microwaves or toaster ovens. Like I'm talking to someone about their dream, the dream that they had since they were like, I remember being 5 years old and being I just want to be a professional athlete, want to be whatever, want to be a professional baseball player. Like, that's all I've thought about since whatever, 4 or 5 years old. So when you understand that that's what you're dealing with, then, and you think about yourself, like, well, that was what I wanted. So why would I not, if I'm going to promise to be there, then I'm going to be there, and you're not dealing with just like some emotion agnostic product. Like you're dealing with someone's dream.
Yeah.
They're trusting you to help them with their dream and achieve it. And so, that might come with some, therapist empathy level touch, but that's what you're signing up for. You're signing up for, you're signing up for a relationship. You're not signing up for a product.
Yeah. Do you think having that level of like that at its core, you're talking with people about their dreams, does that fuel your passion that much more behind what you do?
Yeah, 100%. I think because everyone's got it. And I think I just remember being, in my dorm room or whatever, crushed because you couldn't do it. And there's nobody really there to help you. And so knowing that if I do a really good job at, even gaining information, if I do a better job at gaining information and making better decisions, I'm going to be able to help somebody do it themselves and get there. And so I think that really drives what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, as we kind of come to a close of the podcast, that ties in perfectly to, what I love to ask as kind of a wrap up question to end the episodes, because, I've always been of the mindset that so many people struggle with that initial action. So many people are going through the motions. They feel kind of stuck in where they're at, and especially in their, young professionals specifically. Why do you think it's so hard for people to, take that first step, to generate the first bit of action, to start living, a life that's in line with their true passions and their true purpose?
Yeah, I think it's probably because I don't think enough people do a good job at stepping back and realizing like what they actually want. Like
Yeah.
I think sometimes like the confidence comes from knowing what you want and who you are. You'd have no problem, if you knew that the roulette table was going to hit on red. You knew it. You came back in the future 30 seconds. You put $10 million on red. It's the confidence to know not what's going to happen, but if you're doing, if you're going out and running a business or trying to do that, it's not what's going to happen, but what's going to happen is based on who you are. And the
Yeah.
decisions you're going to make are really based on who you are and how you approach things. So if you don't know who you are, what your niche is, then you're not going to go out and do it.
Yeah, that's great. And in line with that, it's like you said, it's not that what's going to happen, but if it happened the way you wanted, what would that look like specifically?
Yeah.
Because if you don't know that, then you're making decisions that are based on no foundation of knowing where you actually want to get to.
Right.
So that, like that said, for you, what is that place for you? Like what is that? Like you talked about how people need to, people need to be clear on where they're trying to get to. Where is it that you're trying to get to?
I think what I'm trying to do is really build the best player development service in baseball on the private side of baseball. And so I think there's a lot of really smart people in professional baseball and in college baseball who are doing team stuff. But when you're talking about the volume that they're dealing with, the red tape, the logistics, they can't treat everyone like each specific athlete's career is the most important thing. But on the outside, we can do that, and we can, prioritize each individual athlete and quote unquote customer that we have. And so being the best at helping players navigate their own career is what I want to do, and what I want to be able to scale and bring guys on to be able to do. And that's their passion. And then help coaches, because coaches have dreams too. Like, you think your dream ends when your playing career is over, and then all of a sudden you're coaching and you're like, man, I really want to be this, or I want to do this in this organization, or I want to own this. And so how can I help coaches as well, do what they really want to do and reach their dream?
Yeah, well, I think you've built a solid foundation, and you're kind of on your way to bringing that dream into reality. But man, Ben, it's been a awesome time, kind of sitting down and being able to hear a little bit about your story, dive into the mindset behind it, and share a little bit about your journey. So I appreciate you coming on today. I hope you've taken value out of the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, 100%. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Take a Step podcast. Just know that no matter where you are on your growth journey, every mile begins with a step. We'll talk to you in the next episode. Thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Take a Step podcast. If you liked this episode, please leave a rating or review on whichever platform you're listening. Or if you're watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. And if there's anyone you know that you think would find value in this episode, go ahead and share it with them. And let's continue to build this community around people who are willing to take ownership and take action in their lives so they can experience true fulfillment. I'll have all the info to subscribe to the Weekly Mile newsletter down below in the podcast description, and we'll talk to you in the next podcast.